Welcome to the 2013 Summit Podcast, presented to you by the Oregon Ministry Network. Summit took place April 15th through 17th at People's Church in Salem. The following learning lab entitled Storytelling, How to Tell Your Story was brought to us by Chuck Neighbor.
Quickly, if you want to hear about the submarine, since you brought that up, one of the things that I used to travel with the theater ministry, and we did a lot of work with the military. And when we worked with the military, we'd often work through the chaplain's corps. And rather than us performing somewhere and people coming to us, their strategy was take us to where the soldiers or the sailors are. And so we would go out on military, sometimes do 16, 18 shows a day, little mini shows, 15, 20-minute kind of presentations. And so we were touring through a dry-docked submarine in Pearl Harbor. And so it was just, you couldn't really move, but you just kind of stand there and recited your lines back and forth. But that's the submarine story. But I want to talk a lot about story today, and not just talk about it, but give you some interactive things that you can do to help you connect with your own story. But I thought the first thing we would do is everybody just put your things down and stand up, and we're going to form, basically, come up, everybody, there's not very many of us, everybody come up to the front of the room here. And we're going to kind of form a great big circle. Just kind of, you'll kind of join me in a circle here. We're going to do a little interactive storytelling thing, and I think you may have to say, what's this all about here, but once we get into it, I think you'll say this is very appropriately timed for this time of day as well. What I want you to do is turn face this direction. So there you go. And move forward if you need to, so you can put your hands of the shoulders. You need to slide here on this side of the podium. Of the shoulders and person in front of you. Just keep moving around until we can all make a connection here. Connect. There we go. What I'm going to do right now is introduce you to the art of the holy back rub. You may not realize it, but there's a back rub for just about every story in the Bible. And today's story goes something like this. You'll kind of have to turn your head and watch me as I demonstrate. Once upon a time, a man was walking down the road from Jerusalem to Jericho. So take your fingers and form a little man and just start walking down the road from Jerusalem to Jericho. Do not go all the way to Jericho. As the man was walking down the road from Jerusalem to Jericho, he was suddenly attacked by robbers who beat him, kind of cupped their hands like this, and robbed him, a little frisking motion, and left him lying there half dead. Gently choke the person in front of you. Gently, okay? As he was lying there half dead, there came a Levite walking down the road, starting over the left elbow, and walked up over the left shoulder blade. Levite, by the way, I'll tell you what, instead of, let's make two lines instead of a circle. That way we don't have to keep reaching forward. We'll stop right there, and that works like that. So you just get to be the head of the line. You don't have to worry about doing it. So once again, Levite starting with the left shoulder, up over the left shoulder blade, and he saw the man, take your thumbs, press in firmly between the shoulder blades, then pass by on the other side. Likewise, there came a priest walking down the road. He saw the man, passed by on the other side. Now there came a Samaritan riding on his donkey. He saw the man, pressed in firmly between the shoulder blades, had compassion on him, and went up to him pouring on oil and wine. Just big sweeping motions as you pour on the oil and the wine. Okay, he put the man on his donkey, took him to an inn where there was a flashing neon sign, flashing vacancy, 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 vacancy. He gave the innkeeper 2 denarii, tap on each shoulder blade, tap, tap, then finger down the spine and gently squeeze the neck. If you do it right, you should give the person chills. Tap, tap, down the spine, squeeze the neck. Yes, and it gave the innkeeper chills too, just to see all that money. And he said, please take care of the man. If you need anything more, I'll repay you on my way back. So now we're going to turn and repay each other on our backs. Oh, there you go. We're going to go a little faster this time. Once upon a time, a man was walking down the road from Jerusalem to Jericho when he was attacked by robbers who beat him, robbed him, frisky motion, left him lying there half dead. Gently choked the person in front of you. As he was lying there half dead, there came a Levite walking down the road, starting over the left elbow, up over the left shoulder blade. He saw the man, press in between the shoulder blades, passed by on the other side. Likewise, there came a priest, same drill. He saw the man, passed by on the other side. Now there came a Samaritan riding on his donkey. He saw the man, pressed in firmly between the shoulder blades, had compassion on him, and went up to him pouring oil and wine. A little more oil, a little more wine. That's great. They put the man on his donkey. The embers are flashing neon sign, flashing vacancy, 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 vacancy. He gave the innkeeper 2 denarii. Tap, tap down the spine. Squeeze the neck. Give the person chills one more time. Tap, tap down the spine. Squeeze the neck. Yes, and gave the innkeeper chills too, just to see all that money. He said, please take care of the man. If you need anything more, I'll repay you on my way back. And Jesus said to the disciples, now who was the neighbor to the man in need? And the disciples answered, the one who showed mercy. And Jesus said, go and do likewise. So please be seated. A little wake you up here. I think it's appropriate, though, in a session about storytelling to start with a story that Jesus told. And that being the parable of the Good Samaritan. Certainly, Jesus did use story, didn't he, to get his point across. And I want to talk to you today, even though I'm known, as you tell from the introduction, I'm known as an actor. I've begun to delve recently, more in recent years, to actually just focusing on some presentations that work with just simply telling stories, telling my personal story. Because I think there's great power in our stories. But, I think you need to realize that it just doesn't happen automatically. There's a little bit of work that needs to be done, a little bit of preparation, and gets into telling our stories. So I want to go over what exactly is a story with you today and give you some applications of ways you can work on telling your story. Why is story so powerful and popular and the way we communicate? Give me some ideas about why story in the first place. We relate. Good. When you hear a story, there's a little bit of, hey, I can see myself in that. I've been there. I've done that. When we hear a good story, it helps to connect, and then the communication process is that much more effective. Anything else? Remembering? Elaborate. What do you mean?
You don't easily forget a story.
Okay, yeah, good. It's good. It stays in our mind. It's amazing to me watching even, I'm in a lot of churches, a different church just about every week, and I hear a lot of sermons, and I like to watch body language, and it's interesting to see how people's body language will change. You watch congregations, watch audiences. A pastor may be up and just preaching a typical sermon, but they break into story, and I see this. I see people leaning in, people kind of hanging on every word. The story ends, and sometimes people kind of go back to daydreaming again, but they hook in and they connect with the story. Other reasons why story is good.
Illustrates the concept.
Illustrates the concepts. Yeah, we are visual people. Story conjures up visuals in our minds. It helps us to remember. Good.
It's real life usually, and not just...
Good, yeah, it's real life. Again, makes it, a relatable thing. Yeah, so we relate, it captures our attention.
It's less threatening.
Less threatening, yeah. When we hear a good story, we can kind of relax a little. We put our guard down, and then that story can sneak in and grab us by the heart by the time it's over. Very good. I've been discovering something lately, as in my own ministry, where I would go and I would act, and people would come up to me afterwards and they would say, great production, really enjoyed that. How do you remember all those lines? Things like that. Those are the kind of comments that you get. But when I'm doing story presentations, people are coming up to me and they're wanting to tell me their story. And I'm finding that there's this connection that's taking place. That by my sharing my story, by my being a little bit vulnerable, a little bit exposed in that sense, then people are more free to tell their own stories. And so that relational thing, that connection thing that happens, and it can be very powerful when we learn to really tell a good story and tell it well. So identification, authenticity, I would say, is a great thing that comes out of storytelling. It makes us feel more real. One of the things that I've appreciated about pastors that tell stories is it makes me realize they're real people just like me, because our congregations have a tendency to put pastors on a pedestal, don't they? They do that to us whether we want them to or not. And so when we tell a real-life story that shows maybe some weakness, some vulnerability, some good stories are about things going wrong where we've messed up, then all of a sudden the people say, that's a real person. I can identify with what that person says because I've done the same things. So the authenticity. And another aspect of the storytelling process is that it validates then. If I'm listening to your story and I say, hey, I've been there, I've done that, that means that what I have experienced, even though it wasn't my story, what I have experienced that's similar is valid. It's real. And I can face that and then deal with what comes out of that as well. So the validity of, and I think people really like to have their stories validated. I think what we're really going for in the process of telling story is bringing truth to light. When we tell a good story, it helps to illuminate what is true, what is honest, what is real. So going for that. When we look at the example in the Bible, and particularly Jesus, we discover that truth is communicated not by, and this is something that the church has done, I think, too much of, not by standing up and saying, this is what is the truth, but truth is communicated by, rather than explanation, but rather by events and eyewitness accounts. Jesus, the master storyteller, used parables to tell the story, but the stories in the Bible were meant to be shared, told about, explained. This is what the witnesses saw. And when we communicate truth that way, it's so much more effective than a pastor or somebody simply standing up and saying, this is what the Bible says, this is what you should believe, and just outlining those points. We can accept that, but we can also argue with those kinds of things and be challenged and not really want to be as open to receiving the message as when it's told through story. It's hard to take issue with someone when they're telling you something that happened to them. You can get into debates, arguments, and wreck relationships when you try to force a viewpoint. It's hard to argue with the simple, this is what happened to me. That's why I think the word we often use for evangelism, witnessing, is so much more effective if we literally share what we have witnessed, what has happened to us. We are then called to be witnesses. That implies that we are called to be storytellers. So what does a story have? What are the elements of a story? You've probably all heard this over and over and over again. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. All right? So what is the beginning? What is the middle? What is the end? A very simple way of thinking about it is once upon a time is the beginning. Stories start out with some kind of a level playing field. And then the middle is what happens, and then the end is kind of the resolution, and then they get back to some kind of a standard, normal place. So we have that in our own stories as well. It's what happens between the phrase once upon a time and happily ever after, if you will. Although not all stories end with happily ever after. Some of them are tragedies, and some things don't resolve nicely as the way we would like them to in real life. Something I've learned in drama as an actor is that, and as a playwright, is that every story has a character who wants something. When I'm coaching actors, I'm often telling the character, that actor, what does that character want? What is he looking for? Is he looking for love? Is he looking for validation? Is he looking to get the prize at the end? He wants the girl. What does the character want? There's always going to be a want in every story. So what does your character want? What is your story about? What did you want as you're telling your own story? What did you want to have happen? And then whether the character gets what they want or don't get what they want, it still makes story work in that process. Usually in the story, the character is changed somehow. Either they are a jerk in the beginning, and at the end they're not a jerk anymore, They're not in love at the beginning, at the end they are in love. So there's some kind of change that takes place. And if you look at your own life stories, that's what it's really about, isn't it? Change happens, something happens in that process. The other thing to understand is that all stories have conflict, and people often misunderstand this by thinking conflict means a fight, right? Well, it does sometimes, yes. But conflict can simply mean, should I get out of bed now, or can I wait a little bit longer? Can I sleep in another hour? There's a conflict going on. Should I eat the pastry or should I not eat the pastry? That can be conflict. So there's all kinds of conflict, and every story has to have some kind of a conflict. One of the criticisms of drama in the church over the years is too often it was too easy. There wasn't enough conflict. It was just characters getting up there reciting what they thought the audience needed or wanted to hear, kind of a sermon in disguise in a sense, and there wasn't enough conflict in it. So we need to make sure that there is conflict in the base of our story here. What makes a story is the character pursuing something and overcoming or not overcoming. So there needs to be that pursuit that's happening in the process of the story unfolding. One of my favorite authors is Donald Miller, and this is a quote from his book, A Million Miles in 1,000 Years. If the point of story is the same as the point, let me start that over. If the point of life is the same as the point of a story, the point of life is character transformation. If I got any comfort as I set out on my first story, it was that in nearly every story, the protagonist is transformed. He's a jerk in the beginning and nice at the end, or a coward at the beginning and brave at the end. If the character doesn't change, the story hasn't happened yet. And if story is derived from real life, if story is just a condensed version of life, then life itself may be designed to change us so that we evolve from one kind of person to another. So again, going back to what's the point of the story, what's the purpose of the story? It's to show life change. Whether it's your own story or a story, if you're talking about a Bible character, whatever the case may be, we need to be showing that life is changed in the process. Let's look at that model then and explore the story of the prodigal son as an example. Beginning of the story, what does the character want? He wants the inheritance. Other words that the character might want. Freedom. Good. To be just out from under mom and dad's rule. Anything else come to mind what the character might want? And again, the character may have multiple wants. It doesn't have to be just one single want. The wants will often serve each other. He wants independence. He wants money. What are the obstacles? Now this is the conflict part. What are the obstacles for him to get what he wants? Dad's still alive.
He's not firstborn.
He's not the firstborn. Tradition. How do I get the money? That's the conflict. How do I break away? What do I need to do to get there? So yeah, getting the money from Dad, and then as the story progresses, other obstacles come up. He runs out of money. He's hungry. That's an obstacle. And then there's this big choice of, do I humble myself and go back and say I'm sorry? And what will happen from there? And then does he finally, in the end, does he get what he wants? Yes, not the way he envisioned it at the beginning of the story, does he? Because in the beginning of the story, he has a certain vision of what this freedom will look like. At the end, he gets what he wants, what he really wanted all along, but it looked totally different than the way that he started out. And so many good stories are like that, aren't they? We think we're going to go and we're going to, you think back to your youth and you think, when I get older, this is what I want to do with my life, and we kind of have a plan, and then I'll be happy or whatever. And we get to a certain place in our life and we realize, how did my map work out? Am I happy or not? And you may say, yeah, I'm truly happy, but it certainly isn't what I thought it was going to be when I started on this venture. There's all kinds of obstacles and things that change the story. But that's what makes story interesting. When we get together with our friends and we begin conversation, so often we do what's the typical thing. We talk about what? The weather, what you've been up to lately, what do you do for a living, different things like that. But so often the best conversations come out of story. What can we learn from that? And the very basis of that is then what's going wrong in your life? Really, one of the best conversation starters, if you really want to get a good conversation going, is to ask people what's going wrong in your life right now. And all of a sudden, the conflicts will come. Then you're going to hear lots of things. But nice weather today, isn't it? Hey, and how about that game the other day? And all these kind of surfacey things, when really we have a desire, I think, inside all of us to share our lives with each other, to hear what's going on in other people's lives. And that comes out of that story process as well. I've learned a lot about story, and it's helped me as an actor and as a writer and as a storyteller through the process of improv. How many have watched that show, Whose Line Is It Anyway? At first blush, I think you watch a show like that and you think, well, they're just getting up there trying to be funny, saying whatever funny thing comes into their mind. But they're really not. You learn in improv that what makes improv successful is that there is actually a formula. There is something that's going on. And you know what that formula is? It's story. It's trying to tell a story. Now, sometimes it works really well and sometimes it falls flat. But the basic idea behind a good improv is the actors are trying to tell a story. So I've learned a lot about that process, and when I have trained actors in improv, we go back to what is story, what makes story work. So we're going to do some things today that are on the improv edge of things. Don't worry, I'm not going to get you up here acting in front of everybody, but we're going to play some games just kind of in small groups, just so you can get the idea of how story unfolds and how to make it feel a little bit more natural. So what I'd like is every 2 rows, these 2 rows here, if you'll go form a little group over here, and you 2 rows form a group over there, just kind of stand in a circle. Same over here, these 2 groups form a circle over here, and you 2 form a circle over there. Just stand in a circle. And then I'm going to teach you a very simple game, and then we're going to modify the game and make it just a little bit more challenging as things unfold. One of the principles that you learn in improv is that you always accept what the other person has said and then add to it. It's called yes and. So what you're going to do is you're going to go around the circle. You're going to make up a story right now as you go around the circle. And what you start every sentence with is yes and. So if I start the story and say, hey, I was walking down the street one day, then the next person says, yes, and as I was walking down the street, I tripped and fell into a mud puddle. And they stop and the next person begins. You just get to say one sentence of the story. So we don't know how it's going to end because each person gets to add their own element to it. But every sentence must be yes and. You cannot do this. You can't say, I was walking down the street the other day. Yes, and I really wasn't walking down the street. I was, you can't deny. You have to accept what that person says. Whatever they say is truth. Then you have to take what they say and add on a line to it and go all the way around the circle. So go ahead and just try that. As one person start. Just start any kind of a random thought. You could be going somewhere or watching TV or whatever it is, but make things go wrong and try to make a story out of it. Go ahead.
Yes, I got out in the 80s. Then I started to feel quite
Yes, and so I called Yes, and I was with my friends at the same time.
Now, when you get to a place where it feels like the story's over, just start another one. Okay, stop for a moment. How did that work? How did every group, did you feel like it worked okay in your group? Did you get through at least one story? No? Did it work okay over here? Did you feel like you got through one story? Did you make it work over here? Okay, what we're looking for, again, what we're looking for is story arc now as we do this. The first time you do it, it's just kind of like, what am I going to say? I got to say something, yes, and you say something. But really what I want you to try to do is get that whole story arc in. And so I'm going to give you a little bit more structure this time. And this time, the whole story is only going to be 5 sentences long. So at the end of the 5th person, the story is over and start a new story. Then on person number 6, go another 5 sentences. So it looks like this. First person says a sentence, and their sentence is a statement of balance. Their sentence is basically the once upon a time. So their statement might be, I was walking down the street one day. Or as I drove to the church the other day. Or I was shopping at Walmart the other day. It's just a statement of facts. Something happened. Nothing's gone wrong yet. Everything, and we call it balance. That's a kind of a foundational sentence. Then the next person, what you're going to do is unbalance the story. So it's all in the first person. So I was driving to Walmart the other day, unbalanced, when a dog jumped out in front of me, and I had to slam on my brakes, and I hit the dog. Okay, that's one sentence. So unbalanced, something goes wrong. Then person number 3, quest is to solve the problem. You're not going to solve it, but you're going to go on a quest. So I got out of the car and I ran around to see if the dog was still alive, and I started screaming for help. And then person number 4, this is the climax of the scene. Somebody called a doctor, or called the veterinarian, or called an ambulance or whatever, and they came and they helped us. And then finally, the person number 5, and I continued on to Walmart and did my shopping. Okay? So only 5 sentences, a complete story in 5 sentences. And so it's balance, unbalance, quest, climax, balance. Balance, unbalance, quest, climax, balance. Okay? Go ahead and try it out.
And my rubber boots slipped on the decking, and I fell flat on my back.
So I began to search for an implement of extinction.
supposed to remember to
Number 6.
When I realized I forgot my all of my stuff.
If you finish one, start another one.
You're all set up on your recorder?
I think so.
Okay.
Somebody told me how to do it, so I hope it's working.
Well, looks like it is. Did you already sign up?
Yes, I did.
Especially because the actual bottle in my first pudding was such a calm person. Luckily, I packed it up.
Okay, so stop for a minute wherever you're at. Go ahead and pause. Now, what I want you to do this time is I want you to take a story that everybody knows. Okay? It could be a nursery rhyme, or, some kind of a fairy tale. It could be the prodigal son or one of the other parables. But I want you to take that 5-line approach to it and see if you can go around the circle, each person just taking one statement, and tell the story of that parable, but make it work in just 5 sentences with that structure. So, for example, the prodigal son might look like this. As a son, I could put myself in the place of the son, might make more sense. So, as a son, I lived with my father, but one day I decided I just wanted to get out of there, and so I went and demanded my inheritance. I went off to a foreign country and I blew all of my money, and I ended up poor, eating with the pigs. And then finally I came back home. My dad forgave me and killed the fatted calf. 5 very separate thoughts, separate sentences that tells the story in just 5 sentences. So pick a story, and just one person who starts it can decide on the story. Everybody else will have to go with that one. But a familiar story that everybody would know, and try to do it in 5 sentences.
One day,
So what's the resolving of that story?
Okay, good. Everybody come on back and have a seat. Come on back and have a seat. Okay, how many of you found The yes and part, that first one, how many found that fairly simple, easy to do? Anybody find it hard for them? Hard with that group? Okay. How about with the structure, the balance, unbalance? How many found that easy to do? Or what was difficult for some of you with it? Was there, give me some feedback on it. Why, did it work? Did it not work for you? Why or why not? It was easy. Everybody felt it was.
The quest was a little, it was easy to unbalance it. The quest is going to be to bring it up.
Yeah, but if you think about every story, there's that element, isn't it? Yeah. As a matter of fact, if you think in terms of movies, the most of the movie is about the quest. It's usually not very far into a movie or a story where something goes wrong, the unbalance happens. And then once the climax of the story hits, the movie's over pretty quick after that. The story's over pretty quick after that. You can't go on too long. Matter of fact, some movies that I think fail go on way too long after the climax. Pardon? Yeah. So yeah, you want to get out of it. So the meat of the story and all of the things that we go through, and where all of the things that we talked about earlier, the identification, the validation, the relatable stuff, that's usually in that quest that all of those things happen. But if you take these ideas, and now, let's go ahead now. How about when it said pick a story that everybody knows? Did it get easier or harder to do it that way? Why was it harder?
Because he started out with a dumb story.
He didn't like the story. Pardon?
A little more confining in the parameters.
A little more confining, yeah. And part of the purpose of the exercise is, we strip it away and we say, okay, get to the essence, get right down to the main point of it. But I think if you can get down to that main point, this little, very simple little outline, but then go and take and plug that into the stories that you tell, plug that into your sermon outlines, plug that into the different presentations you're making, it can sometimes keep you from rambling on. How many of you have heard somebody that's telling you a story and you kind of feel like, okay, yeah, get to the point, skip over that. So if you strip away some of these things and say, what are the most important things, you will tell better stories. So I'm going to really force you to focus in now. We're going to go from 5 lines to 3 lines. What I want you to do now is just simply tell a personal story for you. I want you to take out pen and paper or punch on your iPads or whatever, but I want you to write a 3-sentence story. And I want you to make a story right now that has something to do with spiritual aspects of your life. It doesn't necessarily have to be your testimony, but a 3-sentence story that explains some kind of a spiritual impact within your life. I'll give you some examples of how this might look. I'll give you one of my stories and then some that I've taken from other workshops where I've done this. When I was a child, I dreamed of growing up and being an actor. As a teenager, I felt God was calling me to full-time ministry, and I felt I would have to abandon my dreams of being an actor. Today, I travel the world as a professional actor in full-time ministry. So there's 3 sentences that give a very simple summation of a big part of my life, but in only 3 sentences. And if you can think of these stories as great conversation starters, if I were if meeting somebody and very briefly like an elevator kind of conversation, and I told them that much, hopefully they're going to say, I want to know more about some of this. Can you tell me a little bit? But there's lots of opportunities for more expanding and making the story bigger. But if you can start with a small one like that and then give yourself permission to expand it from there, but focusing in on what are the 3 most important things that you want to say in the context of this story structure. Here's a few more as examples. This is from a man named Tom. 15 years ago, my back spasmed from a bulging disc in the middle of a performance. Over the next few years, it went out a number of times, and I wondered how I could continue this job that requires loading, unloading, as well as physically demanding performances. I'm still here. That's his 3rd sentence. Somehow he's made it through. Somebody named Anne. I was on a plane in bad weather when something went wrong with the guidance system. The flight attendant told us to prepare for a crash landing, and we prayed for 15 frightening minutes as the plane descended through the clouds to finally touch down safely. We learned later that a small private jet in the area had gone ahead of us to guide us to the runway. 3 sentences. One more. From Mary. Because I am 4'10", weigh 85 pounds, and have several autoimmune diseases, the doctors told me I would not get pregnant. When I got pregnant, the doctors told me I was too small to carry the child to full term and too weak for cesarean. I am now the mother of a healthy 4-year-old son. Okay? So that's what I want you to do. I want you to write a 3-sentence story about something in your life, a spiritually impacting point. And after I give you a few minutes to write those out, I want as many that are willing to share those with the group. So go ahead. When you finish, just to make eye contact with me so I know that you're done, so I can gauge on where we're at. Okay, it looks like about half of you have finished anyway. I'll give you maybe just 30 more seconds, see if you can finish things up, and then we'll share some of these. Okay, good. Who wants to share their 3-sentence story? Go ahead.
I spent most of my adult life as a dysfunctional addict. At 40 years old, I found Jesus in an altar in Coquille First Assembly. Now I'm a pastor and director of Lifelink Recovery Ministries.
Excellent. That's great. A lot of information, very short period of time, but lots of things that also, I think, if I were to sit down over a cup of coffee with you, we'd have a great launching pad for some conversation. Okay, somebody else. Yeah, go ahead.
Miscalculating my driving time. I found myself driving at night in an unknown desert area. A huge rain and lightning storm engulfed us, at times having to stop for visibility. A week later, driving through the same area in sunlight proved God had protected us.
Good. Very good. All right. Sometimes it can be a very short period of time that we're covering in our story. It can be the span of a lifetime. It all depends. Go ahead.
Certain that God had called me into ministry, my wife and I began to venture into youth ministry. But we were discouraged when the youth doors all closed. So we stepped through open doors of business and finance. Next month, I celebrate 18 years actively blending the profession and the ministry.
Good. Very good. Okay. Somebody else? Yeah. Yes.
In the second grade, I stole a donut from the grocery store on my way home from school. I got caught, and my mom received a phone call from the store owner, who happened to be our neighbor. I was taken to the neighbor and apologized and gave him a nickel for the donut, which gave me a life lesson not to take something that does not belong to you without asking or paying for it.
Good. Very good. All right. Yeah, go ahead.
When hunting, I fell in the middle of a wet, cold forest and broke my leg, hearing it snap as I fell. I cried out to God as I felt my body going into shock. Within 15 minutes, I heard a truck coming down a distant road. As I yelled at the top of my lungs, I heard it stop, and the hunters in the truck searched for me and found me.
Great. Great. Now, can you see, already I'm getting a sense that there's some incredible stories in this room. There's some incredible stories in this room. Yet I think the tendency for many of us is to think, well, I don't have a story to tell. I don't have anything profound to say, How many, I know as a kid, it's like I always felt, and I actually, in the story that I do about my own personal story, I share about the fact that I felt like I didn't really have a testimony. It was boring. I grew up in the church and all this sort of thing. But as I began to look at it more, I realized I really do have a testimony. I really do have something that's worth sharing with people about. Let's have a few more of these. Yeah.
I was on my way to the bathroom after church in Amman, Jordan, when God asked me a question. Will you come here and serve for 2 to 3 years? I now serve as a missionary in the Middle East, planting churches among Muslims.
Excellent. Very good. Another story. Yeah.
When I was 10, God called me into full-time ministry. Although He wasn't going into the ministry at the time, I felt God wanted me to marry the man who is now my husband. Even though it didn't make sense at the time, I obeyed, and now years later, we are in full-time ministry together.
Very good. Very good. Yeah.
I never imagined that me and my family were capable of providing foster care. Until one day my wife was given the assignment at school to be the aide for a desperately needy girl named Ella. 2 years and 2 concurrent assignments later, Ella is 2 weeks away from being adopted by first-time parents in our church.
Great. Willow Creek has done a thing. Some of you maybe have seen video of it. Maybe you've done it in your own churches. But they've taken this basic kind of an idea, and with a musical kind of scoring, they've done the similar sort of thing with just placards with signs. People are holding up their stories. They're telling their story that way. But I got to tell you, when you take the time to share these kinds of stories, it opens up all kinds of. And, in a very short period of time, people begin to really connect with each other. Some of you are saying things where I'm saying, "Oh, and I've got a story that I can tell you that's just like my story." We connect that way because of the things that we talked about earlier. You've validified, you made valid some of the things that I've gone through, or I've identified, I've related to something you've said. And yet we spend so much time in many of our churches and many of our public situations just talking about the weather, talking about the sports. And if we took some time to share this kind of stuff with each other, we would build community so much faster. And so I'm hoping that you can see how in the process of the life of the church, as pastors, as speakers, that this process of opening up these kinds of stories can really impact people powerfully. And let's hear a few more, and then we'll move on to some other things. Go ahead.
I have more than once been invited to partner in ministries for which I felt unqualified, though others trusted me. Through the actual experience, I was frustrated and beset with internal conflict. I emerged afterwards trained and qualified to take on another task, which I was eminently not prepared.
Okay, good. Anybody else want to share theirs? Yes.
In my mind's eye, I saw a Mack truck looming toward my young 7-year-old body, promising to smash me and erase my existence. In that moment, I decided to walk to the front of the room and ensure my salvation. After praying, I got up from the old oak altar and knew that I didn't have to fear death ever again.
Okay. All right, good. Now, I ask you to kind of bring a spiritual component to these, and I think most of you have done that with that. But now, think about building a library of these kinds of stories. Stories that have to do with life events, marriage, having children, death, holidays, different seasons in life, all kinds of different things that you could have, or emotional things, embarrassing moments, angry moments. You could have a whole library of these kinds of stories. And if you took the time to really think some of these through, having those kind of, in a sense, in your back pocket, think about how effective they could be in terms of counseling other people, sharing your life with other people, getting to know other people in ministry opportunities. Because I tell you, the people that really speak into my life are people that are willing to share their life with me. If I've got something I'm struggling with, I'm going to look for the person who's struggled in those same areas, because I know that they can relate, they can help me. And so letting people know that those things are in your life opens all kinds of doors for sharing. And how many of you here are pastors? Having a library of these kinds of stories to draw off of when you're writing your sermons. When you pick out a text, whether it's a topical sermon or you're preaching something that's a biblical passage or whatever, whenever you can bring in a story from your life. And again, I'm hoping that through this exercise you're seeing it doesn't have to be a long, drawn-out thing, but enough to make your point, enough to get that identification thing going there. When you're basically dropping guards that people will say, hey, you're a real person, because you're struggling the same way I'm struggling, you're going through the same things I'm going through. So I encourage you to really take this idea and develop it. Now again, we're stripping out a lot of what really makes story, we talked about the movies and all that stuff, that quest in there. We're not spending a lot of time on the quest. And so you can certainly spend more time embellishing and making these stories bigger and fuller. But I think if you start with a small outline of the story, it'll keep you more focused, keep you from rambling on and giving things that aren't essential to telling the story. So starting small like this helps you to get a basis for big. Writers typically work from an outline. They do an outline, then they go back to the outline and they add things and they add things. And sometimes when we're just making or telling stories kind of on the spot, we can spend way too much time giving information that doesn't move the story along and bores our audience. Sometimes that happens, and I'm not saying, I wouldn't say if my wife was here right now, but sometimes I think this is a male-female thing as well, but if Lori my wife asks me how my day went, I usually give a 3-sentence version or less. And I ask her how her day went, and it's like a half hour later, I'm still hearing information, and part of me, being a writer and editor, I'm thinking, I would have said that in 1 sentence, but that's just a male-female thing, I think, for a lot of us. But to be aware of that and to start to figure, what does my audience want to hear? What do they need to hear? And what's my goal? What am I trying to accomplish in telling this story? Having versions of your stories that can be, you can take the same story. Every one of the stories we heard in 3 sentences. Could you do a 5-minute version, a 10-minute version, a 20-minute version of that story? And depending on the audience, it might be appropriate to do a longer version, depending on who you're talking to. But to really look at your life and realize you have stories. You have power in your story, and it's the story more than anything else, I think, that you're going to say in front of an audience that's going to really connect and hold their attention and make them want to hear more. So I'd like to open it up for some questions. I know this is a short session. We don't have time to go in. There's a lot of other directions we could go with this, but I'd love to have some Q&A with you on this, if there's anything that you want to ask me or delve into a little bit more.
Would you review those points? Something about beginning, conflict.
Just review. Yeah, the balance. The 5-point, which is really a good model for any story, is balance, unbalance, quest, climax, balance. So things are okay. Something goes wrong. We try to fix it. it comes to a climax where it's a final decision point or whatever, and then back to some kind of a balance again. Other questions? You're quiet. Boop. It's late in the day. I understand that too. I just want to also point out on the table over the corner, I've got some information about my ministry if you'd like to know more about it. We have a couple of videos talking about stories, a couple of different videos that we've created that are great to use in the context of a worship service, that kind of stuff. So all that stuff's on my website. Feel free to use that. I mentioned before, though, that I have started segueing into not just doing acting performances, but storytelling performances. And I'm doing that in part because I guess I would say it's a perception in the marketplace that we are really into story right now as a Christian community, as the church. And so more and more churches are focusing on, so I look at a lot of church websites in the course of my average week, and I'm seeing the word story everywhere. There's the Story Bible right now. There's all kinds of things that are focusing on the concept of story. And so I'm really enjoying this process of kind of fleshing story out a little bit more. And while my ministry for a long time was actors doing acting, and I have a couple of other actors that have worked with my ministry over the years, I became aware of a person who has an incredible story to tell. Her name is Marcia Whitehead, and she's with us today. Marcia works with my ministry now, and I thought we would close this session with just a snippet from what she does. See, what you need to know about Marcia is a classically trained singer. She's the topic of a movie, an award-winning film, a documentary called Laundry in Tosca. She sung at the Kennedy Center. She's got an incredible story. Yet I discovered Marcia living right here in Salem, not singing. And that's part of an incredible story that you all really need to hear. The story that she's been telling in churches around the country has blessed a lot of people. We don't have time for her story today. That's something you're going to have to talk to her about. I'd love to have her come to your church and share her story. But I thought just as kind of a treat and a great way to close this session is for Marcia to sing for us. And so she's going to sing a song, and you can set it up a little bit if you'd like, but tell us just a little bit about why this song, and then close our session with your song, Marcia.
I spent 25 years pursuing a career in professional opera, and I was told that I had the goods to have a massive international career. And while we were in New York shooting this film about my pursuit, the director looked at me and she said, one day there's going to come a time when you may have absolutely nothing but Jesus. And she didn't have any idea she'd be speaking prophetically. But what I have discovered since then is that God closed what would have been my operatic career. He told me he had ministry for me, and then he didn't make me for opera. And in the years after moving from New York and waiting to see what did he mean by ministry, this song has become very, very important to me.
Give me Jesus.
Thank you, Marcia. Marcia is available to come to your church. I'm available to come to your church. We have our calendars with us, and if you'd like to talk to us more about that, we'd be happy to talk to you about that. Actually, we have some holes in our schedule for the summer, and we're offering a summer special of coming to your church just for love offering and travel expenses. And so if you'd like to talk to us about that, please do so. But other than that, unless you have some more questions, I think we're almost right on the minute here when we need to close. So we're done. Yeah, Bill.
Chuck, I just want to say, if you haven't had it, he's worthwhile. He's excellent.
Thank you, Bill.
When he tells his story, it's gripping and well worth the visit.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you for listening to the 2013 Summit Podcast. For more information on the Oregon Ministry Network and our events, please visit our website at oregonag.org.